For some time, I have been talking about the role of Christians in a time like this. I don't know why God keeps on taking me to this topic, but if I can hazard a guess, I will say it's because out of a global population of 8 billion people, we have 2.38 billion Christians. So why is there so much darkness in our world? Nigeria is not the only challenged country. There's a glaring pattern all over. Governments have abandoned their responsibilities to their citizenry and see them as nothing more than a revenue base. Tax the life out of them. From 1990 to 2014, the world made astonishing progress in reducing extreme deprivation. More than 1 billion people moved out of extreme poverty. The global poverty rate declined by 1.1 percentage points a year on average, from 37.8% in 1990 to 11.2% in 2014. Two regions, East Asia and the Pacific and South Asia, accounted for most of the reduction in global poverty between 1990 and 2014. In East Asia and the Pacific, extreme poverty fell from 66% of the population in 1990 to 4% in 2014. In South Asia, poverty was reduced from 50% in 1990 to 18% in 2014. By 2014, these two regions accounted for a much smaller share of the global extreme poor. In contrast, poverty fell at a much slower rate in sub-Saharan Africa, from 60% in 1990 to 38% in 2014. Then came COVID-19 in 2020, and the world witnessed the greatest setback to global poverty reduction in decades, with 71 million more people living in extreme poverty in the year 2020 alone, and most of them in Africa. Let me tell you something that will shock you. Earlier I said the Asia-Pacific region accounted for most of the global poverty reduction pre-COVID, right? That region actually has the smallest Christian population in the world. The region with the most Christian growth in the last century is the region with the greatest number of poor people in the world. Africa. Greatest number of Christians, greatest number of poor people. Why? Does this make any sense at all? When Jesus Christ said his followers are the salt of the earth and light of the world, did he mean we will salt the earth with poverty or light up the world with our problems? I don't think so. There's something fundamentally wrong with the way we are practicing our Christian faith. Let's go back to the very beginning and see what they did. After the day of Pentecost, the number of believers increased tremendously, and they gathered daily. And they continued steadfastly in the apostles' doctrine and fellowship, and in breaking of bread and in prayers. And fear came upon every soul, and many wonders and signs were done by the apostles. And all that believed were together and had all things common, and sold their possessions, and goods, parted them to all men as every man had need. And they, continuing daily with one accord in the temple, and breaking bread from house to house, did eat their meat with gladness and singleness of heart, praising God and having favor with all the people. And the Lord added to the church daily such as should be saved. What you have just heard was the picture of the early church, a picture that speaks of love, communion, sharing, caring, giving, and oneness. Does this look in any way, shape, or form like the church of today? No. What we see today is a race by some of the clergy to build the biggest church auditoriums, buy the latest jets and jeeps, and to live in the fanciest houses, while their flock live in poverty. Christians have now turned poverty into a state of holy affliction and holy begging. Those who want to give are confused as all manners of scams are going on. My mother is sick. My son just had an operation. My children have been thrown out of school. The rain pulled off my roof. My car is bad. I need money for rent, etc. Are the typical stories you hear daily. And the greatest challenge most people have is that some, if not most of the stories, are not true. Those who are begging are waxing stronger. Those who are giving are waxing weaker. A few weeks ago, someone who I have never met but who follows Sunday Nuggets regularly and had also followed my political campaign sent me a message saying it was his birthday and that I should pray for him. I not only sent prayers his way but also sent him 100,000 naira. The very next week, he sent me a message asking me to buy him a car to use for Uber. If you're in my shoes, what would you say or do? I have noticed that anytime I preach about love and giving, I get messages from random people asking me for help. I guess it's a case of preacher, walk your talk. But what some of them don't know is that giving is not the exclusive preserve of anyone. No matter how poor you are, there's someone poorer than you. And no matter how rich you are, there is someone richer than you. This doesn't mean that giving is a one-way traffic that flows from top to bottom, but rather it's a two-way traffic. There's always something you can give or do for someone, no matter how poor you think you are. This is why the early church sold their possessions and goods and parted them to all men, as every man had need. But today's church believes that only the rich should give. Is it then any wonder that the rich are getting richer while the poor are getting poorer? Recently, I saw on social media that a lady from my church was selling food and I decided to support her with some money for her business. I reached out to her and asked her to send me something from her kitchen so I could taste and see if it was any good. She did, and accompanied it with a bill which I promptly paid. No wahala. Shortly after, she sent me a message soliciting for financial support for her business. This thing they call common sense is not common at all. If she knew that I could in any way be beneficial to her business, shouldn't she have sent the food as complimentary? Guess what though? I have experienced this so many times. People like that believe that you are the one who should be given to them. A plate of food is too much for them to give to you. I know some other people who in situations like that will immediately give you a free product or service and use it for marketing purposes. My message today is entitled Shock Absorber. A couple of weeks ago, God was showing me the essence of family. He said the essence of having family is to have a shock absorber. He also said that this is the role of church in society. What's a shock absorber? It's something that serves to reduce or mitigate the worst effects of an unwelcome occurrence or experience. All cars have them, small and big, cheap and expensive cars. They all have shock absorbers. Why? Because they drive on all manners of roads, encounter all manners of surfaces, and climb all manners of things. The passengers in the cars don't feel the discomfort of the journey as much as they should because of the shock absorbers in the cars. This is what or who God says we are supposed to be to our brothers and sisters. We must all travel through the road of life and encounter all manners of obstacles, trials, and tribulations. Our family and the church are meant to be our shock absorbers so that we don't feel the impact of our troubles the way the devil meant that we should. This is what love is all about. This is the only way we can reduce the poverty level in our societies. Be a shock absorber to each other. God bless you all.